Hello and welcome back to the DCU experience, everybody. This is going to be a fun freaking week because this was a crazy episode and we've got a lot to talk about. We've got story to talk about, we've got morality to talk about, we've got character deep dives to get into. We were not expecting this. I don't think anybody was expecting what we got exactly. But it's been a week. How have you fellas been? Crisis, how you been?
Been chilling. Put out a new video, ranking all of the members of the Bat family from, who would win. People say, is this just strength? Is this just skill? No, it's all of it. It's
Mm.
all your favorite TikTok power, strength, durability. It's
Wisdom,
every category.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's taking into account all those things, but otherwise, just been holding it down.
True. How about yourself?
I've just been playing some Ghost of Yote, whatever.
Same.
Um, I was about to get into a boss fight, and Garrett called me up. I didn't realize we were doing it at this time, but so now I'm ready to go. Good
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, I bought it. I bought the game at the absolute wrong time, the worst time, some would say, because I'm just so incredibly busy. I just don't have friggin' time to play the dang game. So,
Yeah.
hopefully after the end of this month, because I have like a huge tournament in Milwaukee coming up, a TCG tournament. So, after that is over and done with, hopefully I'll be able to sit down and like really devote some time to it. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Peacemaker in the big episode, and also to Issa, I believe, left the super chat at the end of the last episode. We will address that at the end of this episode. If you would like us to answer any of your questions, leave a super chat down below, and we will be sure to do that. But gentlemen, this was kind of a crazy episode. How do you want to approach this? You want to do a little start to finish? You just want to talk about it holistically, or do we just want to get into the weeds of like the big reveals and the fallout and what we might see tomorrow?
Let's
I
do start to finish because I can tell that's where you wanted to take it last time, and we
it
tore the steering wheel from you.
just completely derailed right off the get-go. Well, the episode starts where the previous episode ended. We're in Argus. We need to get out. I thought we were gonna get a little bit more from Soft Court. I believe that's what they're calling her now online. That's what Amelia, or sorry, what's her name? What's the actress's name? Forgot. I'm terrible. James is never gonna come on this podcast.
Miss Gunn.
Miss Gunn. Anyway, she's been calling her Soft Court. So Earth 2, Earth X, Hardcourt. We don't get really a lot from her. We get just like one little moment between her and Chris before main universe Chris and Amelia get the F out of there on the jetpack. That doesn't go so well. They get scratched up and they take the peace cycle and they're trying to get out while they're being chased by the police. And we get a really touching scene between Harcourt and Peacemaker. And I know this is something, Crisis, that you did not want to see happen. And maybe it won't end up happening, but we did get a little touching moment to them where she finally relented. She gave in and held his hand, leaned into him, and was like, you know what? I freaking love this guy. What am I doing? And we got a little bit more insight into that. They described it as she knew she was dead and was like, I might as well just like try to have some peaceful final moments here before I get completely destroyed by these Nazis. But what did you guys think of that moment? I thought it was really interesting to happen right at that very second, but hearing about it later on was pretty illuminating.
I feel like it has to be leading into what I guess most of us didn't kind of want him to get rewarded,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe it's just like, listen, give him something, right? Because I don't, obviously he's not going to have his family. Keith's going to have to come after him, so he needs something for him to not just end himself. And I think, and for Hardcore, yeah. And for Harcourt, I get, because even in the last conversation, she didn't say she didn't like him. It was just that she said, I have my own things. I can't do it. Not that I don't like you, right? So she never denied her feelings for him. She just didn't think she could be in that relationship. So I think it worked for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, a sweet, sweet, tender moment before the cold embrace of death. But yeah, I don't know. As far if it's building to something more, I mean, we have one episode left. I don't think maybe they're kicking the can down the road and they'll have season 3 and it'll be like, you know, they'll get together or they'll work out whatever problems they have, or they'll realize that, you know, they're better off as friends, whatever it's going to be. But no, yeah, Harcourt, she's been really good this season. They've definitely, you know, James Gunn's also talked about how with season 1 as backstory, you can really dig into these characters, you know, see what makes them tick, take them apart, put them back together. And I think Harcourt's probably been the best recipient of that this season, especially seeing, you know, her other side. Really, we don't get much insight outside of the top trio when it comes to the other Earth. I guess it is just Earth X officially now, but yeah, I think considering that we have a parallel Harcourt and then main Harcourt, and we learn a lot about both, I think it is fair to say that she is sort of the secondary protagonist of this season. So I think little moments like that on the motorcycle to get, you know, insight into what she's thinking and feeling, it definitely seems par for the course.
I just want to also quickly, I guess because we went a little bit further, this is also the start of the episode. This harkens back to what Crisis said last week about them being kind of stupid, was the reveal of like, oh, there's like the Mein Kampf from every single
Right.
book, and then there's the flags on the wall. It's like, okay, I understand what they were going for with John, where he just doesn't see it. Listen, the mural on the wall was a little bit like, I don't know if I buy that one, but I could understand, like, you listen, you're not looking at the cover of every book you're walking past, but it does make him look a little bit, you know, kind of stupid.
It does. If you think about it too hard, it does. But in the moment, I thought it was just really funny. Like, I just thought the delivery from Cena was really good. Like, how the hell did I miss that? Like, it was just like, it was just a really funny joke.
Yeah.
And if you want to sacrifice, if you need to suspend your disbelief for the joke specifically, all right, James, I can do it. But like, it's one of those things where it's just like, it was funny, and I don't need to think that deeper into it. But the character is just, he's obviously one of the most skilled, highly trained killers on the planet, but also he is a moron. So it's just,
yeah, or like ignorant, like willfully, like unable to see, right?
Yeah.
You know, I was gonna make that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed. I guess the criticism beyond, like, I don't know, if all it was a joke, it would be kind of funny. Like if it was only one of the worlds they went to, like if there's an alternate season 2 where they're just hopping in from world to world and seeing, like, you know, oh, this place is pretty cool. What about that? And then he's like, oh, okay, well then let's go.
Yeah.
You know, that would be funny and innocent, but it's kind of the whole crux of the season, and it's also like an emotional core of, you know, the various characters going to this other reality, comparing it to, I guess, the main DCU, but also clearly commentary on our own reality. And so that's where I'm like, if you want us to take it seriously, but then you also want it to be just like, I don't know, a joke at the expense of, you know, some of these characters. That's where, for me, I was like, this could have been done in a little bit more clever way. But yeah, it was kind of funny in the moment, for sure.
That's definitely true. It was funny in the moment, and there were, like, we talked about it. We talked about the episode at length in DMs, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it. It was a really, really interesting episode to dig into beyond the surface level. But I think it would have been really funny to have, like, potentially like a flashback or something, right, to specific moments that we had seen Peacemaker experience on this new Earth, like him out on the date with Harcourt, or him riding on his peace cycle, or being in Argus or whatever. And then, like, in the background, it's like there's a flag waving as he, like, passes by or turns the corner and doesn't see, right? Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
Or just different things like that. I think would have been funny and maybe have sold it a little bit better to be like they were just outside of his peripheral every single time.
Yeah.
But the mural is kind of hard to excuse. The Mein Kampf's on the desk.
I
Peacemaker's
can
never
see
read a
that
book
one.
in his life. Like the little flags on the desk, probably I probably wouldn't take a second glance at them or even notice them unless like the like Nazi thing was pointed into my face because like it's just a common thing to see in
Yeah.
in like in our Earth if you're in like an office space, right? People have those at their desk from time to time, whatever, and you just see like the stripes and the blue, and you don't even think about it because you already know what it looks like. Like, why would you investigate it any further? The mural's a bit much, and then you have to consider like this is a government building. Why aren't there like big flags like everywhere that you can see? Like when you're like flags outside hanging on poles, inside every single room in Argus doesn't make a lot of
I
sense.
mean, there was a giant Rick flag in the room with him, and he didn't seem to,
Yeah.
didn't seem to notice
that's
anything.
true. Or yeah, or in the DMV, which we talked about as well. Not seeing any of those flags. Not seeing any of those flags. See what I
I
did there?
saw you there.
I just have it like that. Anyway, they are kind of accepting their fate at this point when just earlier we see Blue Dragon give his son a call. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" "Oh, I'm chasing down a black woman, Dad." And he's like, "Okay, come here. Like we have bigger fish to fry," type deal. And
Yeah.
he comes home. Economos is tied up. Economos has given up everything, and Blue Dragon kind of explains like, if they find out about the portal that we have, we're fucked. Like if the government finds out about it, so we need to do something, right? So they
Yeah.
decide to find Peacemaker, bring him in, and we're thinking torture him, kill him. Like obviously we saw what he did to the Earth X Peacemaker. They know about it now thanks to Economos, but they're saved. The Blue Dragon and what's his name? I forget again. It's Keith, but I don't remember
Keith.
the hero name. It's something goofy, some
Red
old
Yeah.
Dragon.
character. Um, they blow all the police officers away. They kill them all, and we think it's in efforts to hide their portal, but it's not. But
Well,
let's get to that because we're going to be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Let's get to that in a
okay.
second because we need to talk about Judo Master and Autobio teaming up with the two vigilantes before we set the stage for, all right, Amelia and Chris have been captured by what we're assuming are
Captain
superpowered
Triumph.
Captain Triumph, thank you. Superpowered super Nazis, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the B plot that ends up merging with A plot at the end of the episode. What did you guys think of Adebayo's escape and her conversation with Judo Master, where they kind of become closer? They kind of understand each other a little bit. Is this the first time these characters have really like spoken to each other? They've
I think
interacted
so.
because obviously Adebayo shot him, but yeah. What did you guys think of that sequence of the B plot?
I guess it's interesting to see characters that always kind of around but not interact with each other. It obviously, I think it's that was to set up the very end of the episode, right, to allow Chris to make the sacrifice at the end and say, whatever, it was all me type stuff. But like I don't know how far this is supposed to go. Like they kind of just bond over both being minorities and then move on, right?
Mhm.
Is what I got from it. It was fine. It just felt like it was kind of needed to move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I like what Crisis was talking about concerning the conversation they had about Earth 1 not being too different from Earth 2. Obviously, I think there's a pretty big difference, but
Sure.
there can be some parallels being drawn, systems of inequality. The varying degrees of those systems of inequality obviously swing one major direction versus the other, but you also have to think outside of the bubble of where we live right now, right? And obviously, this is going to bring in a lot of real world topics that we don't have to really dive that deep into if you guys don't want to. But there are a lot of injustices going on in the world all the time that are pretty bad, right? That we would say shouldn't be tolerated.
Big no-nos.
Yeah, we live in an Earth with some of those injustices. Obviously, Earth X, it's an injustice around the world where everybody outside of this one group is being, I guess, forced into some sort of slavery, right? But the parallels between the two worlds do exist, and you have to keep those in mind when discussing not only the people of Earth X that don't necessarily align themselves with how the government operates, and the people on this Earth as well. So, Crisis, I will pass it on to you.
Yeah, I mean, you said it pretty succinctly, but yeah, you know, I think the interesting thing is clearly Gunn is making sort of commentary on our world, which I think is interesting because when you think of like that sort of parallelism where it seems to be, it's conflating obviously the DCU Earth 1, which, you know, Gunn has said all the time, this is not our world. This is a separate reality. He's compared it to Game of Thrones on how there's an entire alternate history. You obviously have centuries of superhumans influencing different cultures. You have totally different countries, which is something that DC, you know, sans like Wakanda, Latveria, DC has always had in spades. There's central hubs, you know, Gotham, Central City, Star City, Metropolis, Themyscira. They're all fictional.
Yeah.
And they all sort of redefine and recontextualize our world, which, you know, I think Marvel has their approach, which, and this is specifically the comics, because the movies kind of don't really do this. I mean, they touch on, like in Winter Soldier, in Civil War, they touch on sort of analogs resembling, you know, things like the Patriot Act or, you know, constant surveillance and artificial intelligence. But with DC, I've always more so appreciated the approach of this is an alternate history where, like, how different would the world be? How different would politics be? I think it would ultimately resemble a totally different paradigm, right? I mean, there was an interesting conversation. This is probably going to maybe balloon out to a different topic, but we can bring it back. But, you know, there was a thing, is like, is Batman anti-police or something? Because in the new issue, he's like, police brutality is no good. And in my head, I'm like, Jim Gordon, you know, Harvey Bullock, Renee Montoya. I mean, Batman as an institutional figure for a long time, basically he gets the thumbs up from the police force, right? He has Jim Gordon on the inside to kind of give him a badge of honor, because Batman understands that you can't, he is confined by the institutions. That's just one example of how when you have, you know, these vigilantes, and we saw it even in the Superman movie, right? You have all these guys in a dark room talking about, well, you know, this is, what do we do with Superman? What's the protocol here? And I don't know, I guess that's the sort of give and take where I would be curious to see how far it's willing to go with the, like, you know, is this, because I don't necessarily think our dynamics that we would find quote unquote relatable to the real world, I don't think it's realistic to say that DC would mirror those, right? I mean, I don't know. That's where the analogy kind of softens for me, is I think it would just be, in the way that Gunn's described it and the way that he's characterized it, you know, with other projects in the DCU, it seems like it would be a totally different world. But then you have, you know, characters in this season seemingly making illusions that that it's more or less the same. And for me, that's always kind of like, I don't know, it is kind of boring, because I want to see this alternate history, right? I want to see, I just, you know, I don't buy that we would end up right here in the same spot if Alan Scott and Jay Garrick were flying around, you know, in World War II, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand you have to stake it in some form of reality, or else it becomes like hard sci-fi, or, you know, but But I guess off the top of my dome, that's what that sort of scene makes me think or makes me question.
I agree to a certain extent, because when you have alternate history stuff, you're gonna have characters like, you're gonna need characters to have like some sort of moral philosophy, whether you think it's bad or good, and we can only kind of base that off what we know. So even in like the most fantastical works, it's always kind of based off some form of our history, right? So if you're gonna have like racism or the Nazis exist, without like fully going into, okay, here is like their specific ideology, we all have an assumption for what they believe, right? That's kind of needed. And when they're talking about, oh yeah, it's not that different, we can kind of assume what they mean, because to build up a world like that, you would need to be so far away from like the modern, like you'd have to basically be like kind of as far away as like Star Wars is, right? Where you can have Star Wars, they have like slavery and oppression as well, but it's like different from what we have.
Yeah.
Right. Even it's like a further simulacrum down compared to what DC or Marvel would be. And I think like the question of like, is Batman anti-police is so like, I don't know if that question is genuine, because if a police officer runs up and like just kills some random innocent person, Batman is not going to like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if a police officer like helps an old lady across the street, Batman will like them. So is Batman anti-police? Like, what? I like, Batman is for good people, right? Is that not just the?
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily anti-establishment in the way that he would be like anti-police force top to bottom. Obviously, he thinks the police are good in some capacity.
The good people.
Yeah, the good people within the police are good, right, and serve a function. There's Batman ultimately knows that the justice system, right, is what's going to really hinge on keeping crime down, and I think most people's experience with Batman and his relationship to the police forces comes from like the Dark Knight and most recently the Batman, right? That's just what the majority of people know and understand, and Batman's always shined a light on bad actors within institutions, and I think that character does a great job of doing that. He does it time and time again. Any institution you can think of, Bruce Wayne or Batman can infiltrate it and find out like where the poison is and try and root it out. But like you said, True, it's always about people at the end of the day. But yeah, I think there are certain parallels that you can take with the DCU specifically to our world. As long, it hasn't been as fleshed out, but obviously World War II happened. It happened in the comics as well. And there was a National Socialist Party that needed to get taken down because the United States built a robot specifically to do that, right? And then you can point to, I guess, injustices in the world, things like the Jarhanpur and Baravia conflict overseas, and kind of drag those parallels along.
See, that's a positive example for me, because it clearly is like, you can say it's a parallel to, I mean, James Gunn would disagree that it's an overt parallel to very specific ongoing conflicts.
David Daslov would have his head otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. But that's one where it's like, it's obviously human conflict, ethnic conflict, territorial conflict. That is better or worse. Those things kind of are at the core of humanity. So if you're going to you can't make a world without those things. It would just be kind of a peaceful utopia, and that would be pretty boring.
There'd be no need for superheroes, right?
Exactly. But creating dynamics that are new, and having it be staked in superheroics, I think I'd like to see maybe more of that, of just like because the social dynamic would be different. It just would be. And I think, we see that with X-Men. We see that with the MCU, where you can say like the Sokovia Accords, imprisoning these people. You can make a parallel there if you want to. But it is more so like, I don't know. That's the line for me, is I prefer escapism, because the world is pretty rough and tumble, and always has been. So I think there's like, it's just playing that, I don't know, towing that line of like, you want to make things relatable because superheroes can inspire change in the real world, or you'd hope so.
Yeah.
But you want escapism and like power fantasy, because that in and of itself gives you a respite from some of the trials and tribulations that have always plagued humanity. And I don't know, I guess it's not so totally camp A or B all the time, but I think with the wider DCU, I would rather like to see less contemporary issues and more what would the new world look like, especially that Superman seemingly totally changed the game and just kind of uprooted the system in a way, or the United States are kind of reeling from that, with Argus as well in their actions.
Yeah, I hope that. Sorry, True. Just real quick, I hope that the DCU does a good job of offering both, because I like a nice, insightful commentary or parallel to the current world from time to time or past things. I think it can be, like you said, really inspiring, and also help you figure out where you want to navigate the real world. Like, believe it or not, fiction is something that can do that. Even if we talk outside of like superhero stuff, but superheroes can do that as well. They're inspiring. Like, that's the entire point. But then also there is the other side of the coin where we do want that sort of escapism. So I hope DC has a nice blend of the two, and people can take it or leave it. And I think there's always going to be some sort of pushback or backlash when there is something that is trying to parallel something in the real world, say something is bad, make a political statement, other than just like, all right, this is a sci-fi mystery or Green Lanterns are coming to Earth and we're trying to figure out what's going on with an alien, right? So I hope that they're able to strike a good balance, and it's not too much of one or too much of the other, because I think the MCU has done a legitimately pretty good job at that.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. I feel like the MCU has done a good job once or twice. Because I feel like whenever you're going to deal with anything that's a little bit political, it's so hard to cross the line because.
I think they've pulled their punches recently.
I feel like they've only really done anything in like Iron Man 1 and then the Captain America movies, right?
Yeah, Civil War. Well, I guess that's not an Avengers movie.
Captain America, Civil War.
Age of Ultron. I think they did a pretty good job.
A little bit, right?
The Black Panther movies, I think they did a pretty good job, but.
Oh, sure. I forgot. Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, I was gonna say that there's it's been 30 episodes. I'll bring up Fallout New Vegas. I think.
Go for it. Lock in, everybody.
There's an interesting thing with Fallout where Fallout is based on real history, and then they it is just the Cold War, but then they do their own thing. But all the conflicts and the ideas are kind of the same. There's this simulacrum that they do, and especially with Fallout New Vegas, every single faction is a different political, real world political ideology.
Yeah.
And it's about navigating that and making your choices through that. And it gives none of them are clearly, yes, this is a utopia. That there isn't a utopia in any of those. It's here's the good things, here's the bad things about each one. Some are worse than the others.
Mm-hmm.
But it is written in a way that it's informative and makes you think, but isn't so
preachy, maybe.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It doesn't feel preachy. There are things, and I don't even think you need to be subtle with it. Fallout New Vegas can be slick with its writing, but something like Bioshock 1 is not subtle, right? Where the characters, Bioshock 1 is not subtle, but it's very good. It does what it wants to do. Andrew Ryan is not, and the enemies, the antagonist is Atlas. It's not a subtle, and I wonder how you can tackle that in superhero media, because I think Batman does that a lot, and I think Superman does that, and it's always the one of the ones that I think is super interesting. Oh man, we're getting so off topic. Is Superman and Superman being an immigrant and stories that tackle that, right? That one is very explicit, but I think people have such a strong reaction to it, right? Either way, And I don't know how if you want to try to do something that's kind of interesting, I don't know how you can navigate that line when it's so close to the real world, right? When Fallout, it's a post-apocalyptic, people can say, oh, it's different. But when it's so close to the real world, I feel like there's a different reaction to it as well. But
yeah, for
we've got
sure.
it so
I mean,
far.
that's also a huge talking point right now. But it's always a huge talking point. Like
Sure.
it always is, and people never stop talking about it. And I don't think people ever stop talking about it. But it is important to talk about. And I hope Superman does, because that's one of the things that is core to the character. But getting back to the episode, Judo Master meets up with Autobio. They meet up with double vigilantes who are like, hey, we got to save Peacemaker and we got to save Harcourt. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice, at the Hall of the Hall of the Top Trio, they're being held captive, quote unquote. And Christopher Smith kind of lays it all on the line. Like, explains everything that happened. Hey, I killed your son, but to be fair, it was an accident. He came at me. I was just like trying to act in self-defense. Here's my backstory. Take it or leave it.
Backstory.
Yeah, here's my really freaking cool backstory. And take it or leave it. That's how I felt. I'm sorry I came over here and messed all your crap up. And then we get into Augie's perspective. And nobody, I didn't see a single person call this. No one was like, what, True? What, you called it? In some group chat
I'm going to say this. Why did nobody, okay, I'm mad at you guys. Why did none of you call it? Because it makes sense,
it does,
right?
Yeah.
Because if everything is opposite, that's how it should be. But I don't know why we went into the assumption. I guess it's because they are the top heroes. And I guess it's one of the best parts about the episode, where it's like I fight the injustices around me. I don't have the power to change the world. I really like that.
I think it's because the nature of this universe, people would just figure either optimistically or nihilistically, depending on your persuasion, that everyone would just be evil and the rest of the show would just be about like collecting scalps or something.
Right.
Or the rest of the show, they wouldn't figure that anybody here would be good or even close to. Yeah.
But yeah, no, you can keep going. I just thought it was funny because I saw it and I was like, wait, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Right. We've not had any indication. The only indication was Keith being the that's outside of that.
It was literally me, like the scene from The Wire.
Yeah, the
I was like, let him cook. But yeah, it was super interesting to see that, and then to hear like the music ratcheting up, Vigilante getting into position, and you're just like, bruh. And then Chris knows it's coming, and it happens, and it's brutal in the most brutal way imaginable. It's like you're in there, you're in the experience, and it's nasty. And we can get, I mean, it depends on how deep you guys want to go into the conversation, but we can talk about how Augie could have done more, did his best, or did more than enough. And then in the end, we can see James Gunn, I think, was leaving it up to somewhat of interpretation. He did clarify a little bit on his intentions on Threads, his favorite app, which he's on there every day, all day, every day, talking to people, debunking things, or giving additional insight into things coming up, or just lying. Because sometimes, I guess, a head of a studio, you just gotta lie when someone does leak something that's real. But
like Green Arrow.
Yeah. Like exactly, bro. I still can't believe. Like we had a whole episode about. I still can't believe that happened. Like Oliver Queen's
lie.
That's in like Lanterns, right? We're gonna see that. Or...
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I'm betting everything.
Anyway, I'll let you guys decide what you want to do with the Augie conversation. I'm willing to go anywhere here.
Okay, I guess we can start off with with his role in the world. I understand, because it's okay. He probably isn't born during World War I or II, or if he is, he's super young, right? So the world is the way that it is by the time he's alive. And if we're making now they are the top trio, but then being like, listen, the government finds out we've got this, we're done, right? To me, shows that they only have so much power. I can understand being like, man, I can't change. I like that as an idea where it's like, listen, maybe you can't change the world, but you do what you can for like the people around you, right? So like, I can't hate on someone for just like trying, and I really like that as a sentiment, because it is the opposite of the Earth One,
the original
where,
Augie.
yeah, original Augie and the crew, where the crew are like, they were in this, like they were in a world that was much better, right? It has its problems, but as a base, they're in a better world. But like,
yeah.
what have they done to like actually improve it? Really, they saved
These characters especially haven't.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's what I mean, right? So like, it's from a standpoint, like it seems like he's actually just completely correct about them. They might have started to try to make changes, right? But like,
I would say Adebayo specifically, probably the only one that is the exception to the rule. Economos and Amelia definitely are two. They work for Argus, and Argus is obviously a corrupt like piece, like, and they want to stay there, right? They're worried.
Yeah,
about,
she wanted to go back into that world, even though she knew they were wrong. She's, because again, she says, I would have stopped Adebayo from leaking that information about Waller.
Yeah,
right.
So she would have been complicit. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like she's not actually doing what she can to save the world. She's doing what she can for her. And it's like a certain level of greed, which again, whether it's a negative character trait or not, I think it's a nice wrinkle for the characters to have, because it is just a true fact stated by him. And I think it was one of my favorite lines. Yeah, I think it was one of my favorite lines from this season, actually. I think it's really good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think about Amelia and Economos' role within the DC universe. You go back to the Suicide Squad movie. They are just genuinely complicit in multiple like human rights violations, war crimes. Like, they are not the best people in the world. And I think it is a cool twisted mirror to shine back on them and have Augie be that person to shine the mirror. But I also think like what he's saying is sort of true of himself as well. And we discussed this a bit offline. I think the character probably could have been doing more. We don't know exactly everything that he was doing, but James Gunn also sort of alluded to this as well. It was resistance, it was defiance, but what are like, how far are you willing to push that defiance? How comfortable are you willing to be within the world that is surrounding you? It's a really complicated subject, and I think it's really interesting to dig into, talk about, and like have genuine deep conversations with people about it. And I think that's what's great about James Gunn's writing on this show, especially with this episode, is it can open up that dialogue, and hopefully people can have it with their friends, with their family, and have it in good faith, right? Because our world is like so politicized right now, like maybe more than it's ever been in, at least in our lifetimes. I think it has been way more in the past, obviously, but right now especially. So it's just a really cool conversation starter, I think, that you can genuinely have with other people that maybe you wouldn't have ever had because like you're just not into that kind of thing, you know? But yeah that's kind of how I feel about it.
I also want to make a point. There's a question I'd like to ask that doesn't get asked a lot in media, because I think for the most part, heroes just keep going until the story finishes, right? They don't give up. That's part of that appeal. And I think it works for like a Batman, a Superman, Wonder Woman. These are like much bigger than like they are more aspirational than anything else, right? But I was reading a novel recently, and it's just the question goes of how much is enough, right? How much are you willing to like sacrifice of yourself before it's like, okay, like I am making changes, but like if I keep going, I will just like be burnt out and I won't have a life, right? Is it? And then the character ends up being like, listen, I've done enough, and he just retires.
Spider-Man 2, the Spider-Man 2 dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
it's hard, man, because I'm always comparing. Whenever I see a superhero, I'm comparing them to like the gold standard. You know, I'm comparing them to Batman. I'm comparing them to Superman, right? Two characters that, for the most part, just won't give up. They'll fight,
Sure.
they'll fight to their dying breath, to whatever they can to stop whatever is happening. Right? Superman, with the world, the universe, Batman, to some extent the same, but mostly like focused on Gotham. Right?
Like 3 city blocks.
Augie, okay, chill. Augie would be facing the whole government itself of the entire
Across the world.
right? So it wouldn't just be his city. Obviously, that's someplace he could start, but is a character that just kind of is a superhero that saves everybody in the world, which is noble. I would say that there's probably the majority of people in that.
What's
world
interesting
are
insight,
people.
maybe not to cut you off, but just thinking about it, is this as soon as he does anything like we say what has he done, but in the one moment he's trying to be reasonable, as far as we know, the cops show up, and they're like, we're gonna get a warrant, we're gonna go inside your house, and it's just a matter of time. And like, I think that gives insight into the local government, and what he would be pushing against is even just like, I mean, he did blow up a bunch of cop cars or whatever, so it's not a super subtle. It's not a super subtle operation, but that still speaks to like him and like what he would do. Like the perfect person would do things perfectly, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But when we're asking what could this person do, the first, I mean, I don't think Augie Smith, he's done 2 things. They fought the big kaiju, which is probably just a plus for, that is just a good thing. Like that was going to kill people. And they stopped the monsters. That was a good thing. And then, he obviously restrains Economos, which is also fair. This freaks in your house. You don't know why. So restrain him. And then he's like saves, quote unquote, Chris Smith from, saves Chris Smith and Harcourt from what he knows to be like corrupt and bad police officers. Right. He's like, these guys are the farthest from good. We don't know. We know obviously the nature of the whole world, but we don't know all the intricacies of, or the police profiling people. Are they strict on even, the people that are quote unquote free? Is it like what operations do they have, like anti-sympathy? If you're a sympathizer, you got to go.
Are they
we
the
just
Gestapo,
don't know,
right? Or are they
are they the brown coats? Like what extent is there thought crime? Like what are they doing? But something, so to where Augie Smith is like, they're not good people. So he gets rid of them. He's trying to be reasonable. And it's like immediately bureaucracy is assaulting him. Immediately the walls are closing in. So I think that gives an interesting insight into what is he practically, how is he going to be effective? Because you think, okay, what would I be most effective at doing? Do I try to fight for my morals and then immediately get stomped out? Or do I try to, and I think what the answer, that at least this project is positing, this specific series, is when you have institutional negativity, or when things are not going your way at a global scale, what can you do as an individual? Because, and I think that's also the maybe a bit of a dilemma, or like a mixed signal, is superhero media, especially contingent on like a fictional universe, right? Like we have Superman, Batman's running around, etc. We have that to compare to, is obviously the game has changed, right? No one can really be Batman. There is no such thing. So what that character and what that universe, what they're able to do, is different. They have a higher bandwidth than what an actual person is able to do to affect real change in the real world. At least the vast majority of people, right? You can have certain standout revolutionary figures, but that's like, the 0.0001% of people who have ever lived have been able to, effectively wield that power. So I think the thing that what Augie says, that I think, he's obviously framed as the moral pinnacle of anyone in that room at that moment, is what can you do? How can you play your part? Because a lot of people, they do just complain, or they judge, or, they're if you want to, I don't know what the word would be, but if you want to sort of look up to the Sons of Liberty and what they're doing, obviously that's not good. They're just targeting innocent people in a corrupt system, and maybe they're benefiting from it to some extent, but they're not actively, as far as we know. I mean, just like working in the DMV, I mean, we could say the same. I think that the point in saying our world is not so different is maybe I think everyone from everywhere thinks there is corruption, that there's things that we're not getting what we want, that there are people that we like that aren't like everyone in the whole world, no matter what system you ascribe to, will always say things could be better, right?
Yeah.
Always the people I like, they could be, well better off. Everyone would love if all of our families got, $1 million every day. But what can you actually do at an individual level? And I think that is a worthwhile theme to try to convey. And then also as well, I mean, there isn't some epic speech at this point, but once Augie's taken care of, skipping a little bit in the episode, once Augie is killed, and then they start attacking his brother. His brother is a by all metrics an awful person. He is prejudiced. You have the debate about nurture versus nature, right? Like if you are in this society where there's almost, like I said with the Augie example, as soon as he tries to budge against the system, it instantly closes in. So it's like, is it fair? These are the kind of moral discussions that you think of when you think of like these alternate universes, right? This alternate history. Who is culpable? To what degree do you ascribe guilt? Do you ascribe, you're part of the problem, so you have to die? Like what, maybe your mileage will vary. But the way that the scene is framed, the way the music, the way it's acting, what I took away from it is they start jumping this guy. And it's in defense of Chris Smith to some extent. But, obviously it's framed with like we have the Sons of Liberty narrative, which is, they're taking DMV employees, hostage and blowing people up and also getting themselves blown up as well. Can't forget that they're also pretty incompetent. But we have that, with the whole vigilante angle. So they start killing, I already forgot his superhero name, but they start killing Keith. And Peacemaker,
Triumph.
Captain Triumph. He's like horrified by it, right? And the scene is framed, and it made me think of, in the first Joker movie. It's obviously maybe a bit of a flip on that, but the idea is that for this whole movie, it is effectively made us sympathize with the villain. There's nothing good about this guy, but we sympathize with him. Maybe some people don't, but that's the point of the movie, clearly, is get in his head, sympathize with him. And Quentin Tarantino has described this, phenomenon where he was watching it, and he's like, you want Murray to get shot. Like, when you're in the movie, when you're, like, absorbed into it, and the way that it's framed, you're like, yeah, this guy's getting what he deserves, but then at some point you're supposed to snap out of it, right? At some point, it's like that's part of the sick joke of the movie. And so I think similar to that, you get in these guys' heads, or maybe eventually you're in Peacemaker's head, and you're like, this guy's my brother, right? Like, he's not, because people judge each other, and that's also something that is part of Blue Dragon's thing. Is they just patently misjudge the situation. They subscribe what they already knew about the other Augie. They go, well, he's got this person hostage or whatever. This guy broke into his house. I mean, for all metrics, in most states, economists should have been shot, right? And that would be totally morally, that would be at least the law. You're in some other guy's house.
You could defend
even morally.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some stranger in your home, you take him out. I don't think anybody would blink twice about that. But they misjudge that. They kill Blue Dragon, and then they go to kill Keith, who you can be like, okay, sure, he's a bad guy, but he's also someone's brother. He's also the protagonist's brother. He's also the brother of this character that we've been empathizing with this whole time. And the scene obviously stops, and we're like, we're made to feel bad for, at least Chris, right? At least him, to say he's had all this horrible stuff happen to him, and these people are killing his brother. I think that's something that a lot of people need to realize. In the sort of cultural paradigm is, you can hate this person, you can think this person is wrong, you can blame the institution, but at the end of the day, it's more than likely not that a good person does love that person, right? That you are taking away a human life, and we are all family, we're all connected, we're all part of the same human experience. So that's something that again, if we want to go farther into it, or if we have time to, but that's something that's another angle as well with Blue Dragon's speech that resonated with me from the episode.
Yeah, just real quickly. Sorry, go ahead, True.
I was going to bring just a point that you said earlier as well with the nature versus nurture thing. I think it's interesting because we don't know Keith in Earth 1. So we have no, like, he's a kid. We don't, like, we assume he's like Chris. But, like, it is interesting that he seems to have, like, fallen into, like, the world's ideas, even though his father is not that, right? We don't know if Chris is like that because they do say Chris is a mess and all that. We don't know.
Augie just says he's like not a good guy. Just like
yes, but
we don't know, is that like,
is he just like kind of a piece of shit, or
he's a Nazi, or because he's like a drug addict asshole?
Yeah,
like,
right.
If he was a drug addict asshole, I don't think he would have said that about his son. I think his son was a friggin' psychopath. I think.
Well, he did say that about. They brought up the drugs, though.
They did, but I still don't think you would say that about your son. Like, hey, this guy killed Chris, but he did drugs, so he deserved it. I don't think...
Okay, no. I feel like you're framing it. I think that was one part of it. It seemed like he was just a crazy person who also did drugs. I think that's... Because, I was going to say, like, it's interesting that Keith fell into that, because the fact that Augie is able to understand and say, listen, Chris made a mistake, and then to, whether you say he forgives him or not, to be able to say, listen, I don't need to end your life for you're making this mistake. I understand. But then for that not to be like part of Keith's, like,
doesn't resonate. Yeah. But I also think that's like a major failing of Augie, right? Like, obviously, so I've been recently, it's October, so I always get into like my horror type beats for October. And last year I watched all the Friday the 13th movies. Not a single good one. I don't know how people like Jason. Anyway, they're all bad.
Facts.
I'm thinking Halloween.
Michael Myers.
The first Halloween's good.
Anyway, but I've been rewatching Midnight Mass. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that show, but in that series, I was watching it and this parallel came up in my head. So what is going on in Midnight Mass is, really quickly, there's a very small island. There's a Catholic church on the island, right? And the sheriff is new in town. He's originally from New York City. Him and his son are there. They're Muslim, right? And there's a lot of pressure, outside pressure, from the town to come to the church. It's like subtly, given to them throughout the series. Like, come to church, yada, yada, yada. The son is in it a lot more because literally all his friends are Catholic. Everybody goes to the church, right? And at the end of the series, the sheriff is like, no, we already have God, right? You don't need to find God. We have him, right? In our own religion. And it's a really interesting topic because the son is like, well, I want to go to the Catholic Church. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to stop my son from like pursuing knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. But the son ends up, what's going on is there's a twisted sort of thing going on. The son partakes in it, and it's just a parallel to Augie and Keith and the Chris from that universe. Because Augie could do all he could in the home. He had control over his kids when they were there. But outside in the world, which is where they probably spent the majority of their time, at school, after school activities, when they grow up, they're obviously not at home. They've left the nest. There's not much control that you can enact over them. So you have to hope like what you've instilled in your child is strong enough for them to withstand outside pressures. Not saying that like going to be a Catholic compared to a Muslim is right or wrong. I'm just saying like that's the example, right? And I'm not trying to compare that to this, but the situation is similar. It's the outside pressure getting to the kid outside of the parent's control, right? So Augie did fail in that sense, like where he was not able to keep his home as clean as he would like it, which then extended out even further. So it's just a really interesting discussion. I think we could probably talk about it for like two hours, but we got to get to the end of the episode because we're coming up to the end of this episode. And yeah, so Augie gets killed, Keith gets jumped, and it's really it's a horrifying scene. Crisis just laid it out, and we were talking in DMs. I was like, it was framed like a horror scene, and our protagonists, the characters we care about, are the ones committing the horror act. And even though it's on a person that we don't necessarily like we know he's not necessarily the greatest guy in the world, but he seemed like a good brother, a good son, right? But at the end of the day, probably kind of like rotten to the core where other things are concerned. And so we want like that character to go down. But then you see it happen, and you see it from the perspective of Chris, who that's like his brother. He's literally reliving the worst day of his life, seeing his brother being killed. And shout out to John Cena. He was incredible in that moment. But yeah, then the police break in. The vigilantes do their thing. They're over the top. They're just gunning them down, no questions asked. We get to the end where our characters are escaping through the portal. Harcourt is going to put a bullet between Keith's eyes. She can't have him coming back. And that's sort of the thread we were talking about in DMs as well. Like, is this going to be a recurring sort of thing? Or sorry, not in DMs, but in the previous episode. Is this like Earth X going to be a thing that we have to tackle moving forward? And now it seems like that door's wide open. We're back in the real world. Chris is under arrest, and he blames himself for everything. So, whirlwind ending. What did you guys think of it?
I don't know if it's like are we gonna have enough time for like Keith to heal up and then show back up and then also
this season? Probably not.
That's what I was thinking. I feel because again I didn't know if there'd been a season 3 announced. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I asked this before, but I didn't know if there was going to be a season 3 announced yet, because that seems like that's what Keith will be for, right? We'll do something here with season. At the end of this season, we'll just be dealing with Argus, which is I hope these characters learn something, because it's the question of, do they try to take down Argus? Because Rick Flag Sr. is a character that I could see be like, listen, this is a corrupt system, right? Because I think we talked about it. I don't think he's a bad person per se, right? And I feel like he'd be able to understand that, but I don't know if he'd be able to like. He might think it's necessary.
Grunt, though. He's kind of like. He'd probably be like, yeah, man, we do some messed up stuff here, and that's the extent of it. Like,
sure. It's like, yeah, I wonder if that's going to be the opposition, because I feel like you have to understand, like, if Waller was the one that sent that order, right, you can blame Peacemaker all you want, but the organization would have backed Waller if everything went well, right? And I feel like I want him to be able to understand that. I'm excited to see where this ends, and then we'll see where season 3, you know, when the trailers drop. I'm loving. I also wanted to agree, man. John Cena is definitely the best wrestler turned actor. I know you were saying Dave Bautista, and I know Crisis was, you know, saying The Rock. Every single time we talk about it.
Not true.
It's
no, don't be shy now.
No, Dave Bautista on Blade Runner alone, I've been saying is the number one, and The Rock is just The Rock every time.
Listen, okay, this guy Crisis, me and him were talking yesterday.
Machine yet, to be fair, but anyway, go ahead.
I hear it's not good.
Yeah, I heard it was.
That?
But yeah, Crisis was talking about how the Tooth Fairy is like one of the best acting jobs he's ever seen from The Rock. I mean, from anybody.
Brings me to tears, but for not the right reasons.
Anyway, yeah, it's just great. So I'm happy to see more John. I really want John Cena to fight Batman. I do. I really do. But, you know, we'll see if he's around long enough. I mean,
I'd love that, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, we'll see if he's around for long enough
Batman, so we know that.
Or
yeah, neither am I.
Really. He's just like, oh, this guy is morally,
he's not
you know,
a
why
fan
does
of
he
any
kill people?
superhero, right? All he does is talk smack on him.
And the Justice Gang just rejected him and said he's an idiot.
It's projection mostly,
that
and
was
jealousy, but yeah.
That was brutal, I can't lie. But anyway, yeah, that was
yeah, if Hawk Girl was saying those things about me, man, I'd crash out.
Yeah, no, it's it feels a little bit, I think my concern, I'll just be the voice of concern, I guess, but my concern is it seems like everything is kind of wrapped up. As like you would end it on a cliffhanger, right? You'd say it's like the Empire Strikes Back. We're in the dark place. We're in the darkest spot, and then you'll set up for season 3. They said James Gunn said that they were going to kill Keith initially, which that would have been probably worse because I mean, how would he have died?
Yeah.
Like they murder
His
him,
friends murder
yeah,
him
like
in front. Oh man.
No, I think he was saying that Harcourt shoots him in the original.
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So Chris wouldn't have seen it.
If that's the case, then that probably would be something he would discover later, and it would probably make the gap between him and Harcourt like impossible to cross, right? Like how much more guilt,
you
how
killed
many
Rick
more
Flag,
secrets,
though, and I forgive you for that.
yeah.
You know,
and he's
it
like,
might be
well,
an
no.
Rick Flag was like a guy you were sleeping with while he was
that
with
was her
another
best
girl.
friend. That was her best friend.
Sure. Man, you can't do the I killed one, you killed one. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that's how friendships work, but yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean that is interesting. But no, so the fact that it does feel like the story was meant to end there, and then the next episode, Gunn has been like, this is crazy setup. There's gonna be crazy cameos flying at you. You know, this is gonna set up Superman 2, which they should just call it Superman 2. Let's be real. But yeah, it's gonna set up the next Superman. I'm kind of imagining there'll be a little bit of like giving some sort of narrative thrust for Peacemaker into season 3 or whenever we see him next. They'll give him a little bit of like, here's your motivation to break out of prison or something, right? And it'll kind of just be, you know, cliffhangery a bit. But the bulk of it will be like, what's Lex's future gonna look like with Argus? They're gonna explore, you know, a breadth of the different doors. They're gonna open a bunch of different doors. And you know, that'll be, you know, maybe Brainiac will come through a door at the end and be like, I'm now here to be the villain of the next movie.
It's me, Brainiac. I
Brainiac.
hope that's not.
Okay.
I hope none of that happens. I hope it's like a subtle setup because I still want the like Peacemaker show to wrap up. You know, like Peacemaker stuff.
Right.
So
okay. What if it ends with a massive shadow coming across the city? Is that subtle enough for you?
What if it ends up with the render of Brainiac from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? He's in this universe now, and all of that.
Well, I mean, you know, then that would be my last episode. I wouldn't be here next week.
Then
so
I would become a monk.
I'd be off. Yeah.
All right. Let's hit this question and wrap it up, fellas. What do you think from last week?
Sounds good.
Shout out to Issa. Thank you so much for the tenor. Which would you prefer to live in, the Batcave or the Vigilante Cave? I'll go first. I'm gonna go Vigilante Cave. Hot take. The narcotics probably gonna be pretty tough to get rid of without being arrested.
Yeah.
But you're just gonna have to hold on to that, I guess, indefinitely.
Or just do them all,
like
right?
A millionaire.
Well,
if you're living in the Batcave, does that mean like you're a Robin? Are you Batman? Because that's a different question. If I'm just living in there, that place kind of looks like it sucks. So I don't. It's cold. I'd rather be in the Vigilante Cave. I think it's got heating, air conditioning, and there's a lot of money that I can use. So, and Beanie Babies.
I would say Batcave because if I ever get, you know, crazy, filthy rich, I can just buy, you know, stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. I would have a comic accurate 1-to-1 copy of the Jason Todd Memorial.
Oh, okay.
Not the dinosaur.
Not the big penny.
The Robin
not the
costume
penny,
floating.
No? Yeah.
Well, so we get the penny. Here's what I'd say about the rest of the junk. You can just sell that and become like a trillionaire. There's like a nuclear fission powered supercar. Yeah, sell that. Yeah. You know, I'm set for life. Sell the computers. Sell it all to the government. And
what's Batman's stuff? I think like you just live in the cave.
Like Gollum, like I'm just in the corner, like eating a dead bat or something.
Probably have like a bed.
I don't.
Like maybe Alfred brings you food and stuff. But
no.
It's worth it to be friends with Alfred, but then just cocaine. Like, come on, bro.
Batman's Alfred, like, what's this guy still doing here?
Alfred could train you.
Because it's hypothetical. He has to live here. We can't get rid of him.
Yeah, no, Alfred. You're Alfred's like sidekick, so you're like his Nightwing. So you're
nice.
You'll be the next butler.
What if when he dies, I'll be the next butler.
Yeah.
Alfred fall, Butler fall. I'm taking the spot.
Battle for the fucking bow tie, like
T-fall, right?
Scotch, whatever that is.
battle for the white gloves.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Battle for the bow tie.
No.
It was crazy.
The problem with all the bat caves is none of them look like they're warm.
Yeah, they all look like I'd get cold.
It also there's so much air like flow. Like I can't sleep.
That
I
shit.
can't sit.
There's like water flowing down there. No.
I don't want to be waking up to bats. Like I'm good.
Batman
I'm good
comes in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. Bleeding to death.
Yeah.
Like Alfred's trying to stitch him up. Like fucking Joker's breaking in. You're like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
But all you gotta deal with at
home.
Vigilante's house is like his mom, and she seems nice enough. Like she's gonna make
his
you a
mom is
sandwich.
awesome as well. Yeah, she'd make you food.
Play D&D. Batcave is scary.
I'm like, yeah, I don't want to wake up to like Lady Shiva taking over,
Bane
poison
breaking
gas.
in.
I look up. I'm like, you just take me. I'm good.
Batman's fucking Talia one night. You're like, can I get some sleep?
Tried to cover your ears.
Not this again.
If it's living there, like the whole universe comes with it.
Yes,
and I'm just
yes.
passive sort of witness, then yeah, probably Vigilante Cave. But if I own it,
yeah, then
if
that's
like,
different.
I
That's
get
different.
the deed to the Bat Cave.
Yeah, that's different.
I think that is a better deal in the long run.
For
Because
sure.
you can just strip all the cool shit out and just leave the nasty cave to the bats.
Yeah, that's a difference. So it's an interesting way to come. I think we agree on both, like all three of us. So thank you for the super chat, Issa. That was a fun question. But yeah, we dug into a lot this week, and I think next week's gonna be even crazier. It's a finale. It's gonna be over an hour long. It's gonna set up Man of Tomorrow. We're gonna get some crazy kooky cameos. James Gunn was even teasing it today on Twitter, saying like, "Hey, look at these little rats that the guy is burning in his trash can. These aren't the only little cameos you're gonna see." So.
Oh wow!
Buckle in.
Hold on,
Mr.
It's not a cameo if it's from an Alien episode.
Okay,
so I was gonna say my bad. That's not a cameo. Whatever.
Mr. Mixie is coming in. Anyway, any final thoughts, fellas, before we get out of here?
Plenty, but let's. No, that's just, we're good. We're good. I think.
Rest in peace, Blue Dragon.
Rest in peace, Blue Dragon. You tried. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for us here on the DCU Experience. We will be back next week, bigger and better than ever. We'll see if Nick is able to join us to talk all about the finale, and then it's gearing up for Lanterns and gearing up for Supergirl. Hopefully we get some trailers coming with that stuff soon, some posters, some reveals, and then we're going to be back in the rumor mill season, boys. So lock in before Lanterns is on the way. But thank you everybody for joining us this week. Again, watch Peacemaker tomorrow. We'll be back for Christ is True and Nick. My name is Garrick. This has been the DCU Experience, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace. Go.